I've just disembarked from one of the biggest cruise ships in the world, P&O's Arvia, and I'm going to be telling you the story of how I got to this point. We arrived at Southampton after the very long car journey and stayed overnight, so that we were fresh to begin our cruise. We woke up the next day and made our way to the Sea City Museum to have a look around, as we had a few hours to spare, as our designated boarding time was 3 PM. I, of course, was very keen to visit this museum, as it's home to the RMS Olympics Honour and Glory clock, and several other ship models. The time was now 3 PM and time for us to board, so we showed up at Ocean Terminal, and right in front of us was our ship, Arvia, towering over the terminal. It really was a sight to behold. Embarkation was very quick and easy, making our way through the terminal in under 20 minutes. And before we knew it, we were walking across the gangway, stepping foot onto our brand new ship. The moment we stepped inside, it was just breathtaking. It felt like we were a very fancy hotel. At this time, we were required to visit our cabin for the first time, and to watch the safety video on the cabin TV. Since coronavirus, passengers aren't anymore required to put on their life jackets and walk to their muster stations. Instead, you now watch the safety video on the TV and visit your muster station at some time during the first day. As everyone started to get settled on board, I began to explore all of Arvia's brilliant amenities. For the first night, we sat down at a restaurant called The Keys, which is similar to a buffet, with great views of the port and the windows. We saw several ships depart, those being Cunard's Queen Victoria, Norwegian Cruise Line's Norwegian Prima, and Princess Cruise Line's Regal Princess. After dinner, we took our seats on the promenade on deck 8 to witness the sail away, and I was not disappointed, especially with the shield hall showing up at the last minute before we departed, which was very cool to see. For the remainder of the night, we began to discover all of the entertainment options that were on board. On the morning of the next day, we visited the buffet for the first time, and for breakfast, and it was brilliant. At some points it can get a bit busy, but that never bothered me too much. So many options were available, and it all tasted so good. For the remainder of the day, we lay on deck until it was time to get ready for dinner, and it surprised me how warm and calm it was, especially for the Bay of Biscay, of which we're currently sailing through, notorious for its bad weather. That night, we sat down for dinner in the main dining room next to the giant window with great views of the ocean, and once again, the food was amazing. Before we knew it, we'd arrived at our first port, La Coruña. As we arrived back to the ship and set off back to sea, we were notified by the captain that we had a medical emergency and that a crew member had to be airlifted off the ship. I luckily managed to capture the helicopter coming alongside the ship. It was really cool to see. Thankfully, we were later notified that the crew member would make a full recovery. After a day at La Coruña, we had 2 more sea days coming up, which meant more time to relax and try more of the amazing restaurants on board. The first of these 2 sea days was the formal night, meaning that I had to get all dressed up in a suit and bow tie, and to enjoy the 5-course meal that we're serving in the main dining room, which was amazing as always. The following night, we tried one of the specialty restaurants on board, and debatably the best restaurant aboard, called the Epicurean Restaurant. It was a fine dining restaurant, and it was unlike anything I'd tried before. It was incredible. For the starter, or appetizer for you Americans, I had a combination of meats, cheeses and olives. For the main, I had a sirloin steak, which was the best steak up until that point. But as you'll find out soon, the best was still to come. For dessert, I had an enlarged Jaffa cake, and for any of you who don't know what Jaffa cakes are, they're small cakes with chocolate and orange jelly, and they're very popular in the UK. The next day, we were docked at Valencia next to a giant Costa cruise ship. Due to how large Valencia's harbour was, we had to get a shuttle bus into the city, managing to see all the sights at the same time, and it really was beautiful. While we were seeing the sights, I noticed a large park in the centre of the city, and I later found out that it actually used to be a river, which was very interesting to research. On the shuttle bus back to the ship, we were notified that tomorrow we would instead be going to Cartagena instead of a sea day, and that the stunt to Marseille would be cancelled due to the riots that were ongoing in the city at the time. We had now arrived at Cartagena. However, before we disembarked, we tried out the escape room that it was on board, which was a lot of fun. After that, we finally disembarked and enjoyed the wonders of this port, with a highlight being the large Roman theatre with great views of our ship.